Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Digital Placemaking Podcast, a podcast about the role of public space in the city and how digital technologies can assist in capturing and improving cities and public life. I am your host, Shannon Fisher, an urban planning and urban design student. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of public space in the city and how digital technologies can assist in capturing and improving cities and public life.
Thank you so much, Aviwe, for joining us. Would you mind just introducing yourself? What do you do? What have you studied? What are your passions? And yeah, just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Aviwe Mandyanda, an urban planner and an urban designer. I studied at WITS, studying town planning as my background, and then I did my master's in to specialize in urban design in particular. You're saying, what are my passions, Shannon?
Yeah, what are your passions? Tell me something interesting about yourself.
Oh man, I think it's for me, I'm really passionate about a lot of different things. But if we don't talk about urban design and town planning, I'm just passionate about helping to make the city better in ways that functions and make people's life just a tad different in their lives and how efficient and livable they feel in the space. So I'm passionate about space making, place making, understanding the city in ways that can help us do better.
Oh, that's super interesting. And I think that aligns perfectly with my research topic, which is kind of exploring the impact of urban design and spatial elements on public space and how digital technologies capture and facilitate the measurement of those public spaces and cities in like the urban realm. And I'd love to ask, what makes public space and public life important in cities to you? And how do you think urban design can change and transform a city?
A very difficult question because there are so many spaces that are supposed to be public spaces that are not acting as such. For me, public space has to, in its name, be public at its prime, right? So, for example, our tech streets are very important public spaces, for instance.
Yeah.
But as much as they are obviously a public space, they are most of the time not. So you find a lot of people taking up that kind of what is meant to be shared, a shared environment for not only to meet people, to pause, to sell, to trade, to exchange. People take up that space in ways that almost seclude in ways that seclude other people. So, for example, you get a lot of spaces, especially in our cities, where people are extending their trading stores, for example, within that space in ways that now we can't meet and we can't even walk on those streets, right? And I think there's a really good examples where restaurants all around the city are being taken up in ways that exclude public life from happening or decreases the publicness part of the street, right? Same goes with some open spaces, right? So there's ways in which different either decision makers, they almost, protect or manage those spaces in ways that don't allow for the diversity of people to engage with them or to use them. So for me, public space is really about who and how much of those different publics can use it. And once, and it's a very difficult one in that it's political, right? It's contentious. So a lot of people are competing for this space. Like for example, like the park and the street is very important in the cities in South Africa where people need it not to just access or move around, but also to make a living, right? And I think there's different contestations that happen there where decision makers or planners, urban designers need to negotiate that use instead of blocking it from others and making more accessible for others, for one user group more than the next. So yeah, I hope I answered your question, but in a nutshell, I think, yeah, that's what it is for me.
Yeah, no, you definitely answered my question and beyond. Like I think and I was saying this to Tristan earlier, I think in this increasingly digital age and online age, I feel like we've become so compartmentalized in our life where all we do is we move from the private realm, we go to like in our car, we go to work, and we come right back. And we don't really engage with the community, we don't engage with the city, we don't engage with each other. Even when we're doing menial tasks like we're running errands, like going grocery shopping or like going to grab something to eat, it just becomes so like you become, I don't know if it's just my observations, but it becomes so tunnel vision where all you're doing is you're going from A to B, but like the journey is kind of like forgotten about, and it's almost like taboo to like try to engage with the people around you. Like we're all in the shared space together, you're all in the store together, but you're kind of so individual in that. And I feel like we've really forgotten to make space for places for us to engage and to come together and to, become a community and to just like create those experiences and bonds outside of this private realm that we've like compartmentalized us into. And like I think it's so important for that. And I think with the stresses of work and like living in the city and like the increasingly urbanized like realm, we need those points of relief to like the urban lungs of the city. But yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think like even in a like a South African context, like it gives rise to like informal trading and economic activity, and like where the people are like painting themselves in like gold and silver. Like I like that it's those cute little nuances that really create vibrancy in the space. My next question to you is what is
just on that, I think
Yeah.
you raise interesting points in the sense that I feel like, especially after COVID, there's so many cities that have are rethinking the idea of publicness, right? So one might argue because we are so connected via our mobile phones, for instance, or through the internet, there's so much people are engaging more, right? But they don't have to be physically together to engage, right? So it's opened up so many networks and in almost public engagement, either through virtual meetings or parties even, where you're able to meet in different public spaces within the internet, right? But it has been interesting for me to watch how the interventions, especially interventions in like your New Yorks, man, where urban communities are trying to figure out what does it mean to live in their own spaces. So because we've been forced to isolate, and that has had such a huge impact on how people feel about their relationships with others and about time. People have lost so many people that they've rethought their relationship, at least from what I've seen and read, that they feel like they need to make more effort in those endeavors. So being in community groups where urban environments where people are re-looking at their suburban streets, where it's normally streets where you never see anyone on those very suburban life, where people are making doing initiatives to allow for that engagement. So whether they're closing down streets to engage in what is it, like street days, or what activity days, using that street as almost like as a public space, or turning some of those streets into public spaces. And also rethinking about how do you create this idea. I mean, I think it's been tested in cities like Paris and the sorts. Even I think in some parts in Johannesburg, in these other suburbs, where people are looking into how do we create these 15-minute walk city, right? So there was a lot of discussion amongst urban designers and town planners who are forward thinking around how do we make streets for children? How do we make streets where we can walk 15 minutes to grocery stores, police stations, shops, work? And how do we make that with the 15 minutes radius, right? So there as well, it's about but especially with this idea of, at least the privileged the ones of us, is this ability to be able to work from home, right? So for those people, the home has now become important, and what happens around them within that 15-minute radius has become very important, because then you just want to be comfortable, and you also want to be able to, we are engaging more with where you live, right? So it has become very important that you live in a space where you are able to do that, but also you're able to live a much more healthier, livable, have a much more healthier, schedule, workflow, right? Because now we have home offices and things like that, which I think is a very privileged thing to talk about, but it's happening as much as the digital age is upon us. A lot of that are rethinking the community life. But I think there has been some rethink. I mean, the energy there where people are rethinking about their work life, and their play life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make some like super interesting points, and I think like social media has almost become the new public place, or like public space. And I think, you kind of have quite a place of expression, a place of existence where you can engage with other people. But I think like public spaces, in reality, I think are just as important. And I think, digital technologies don't have to detract from public space, but I think that they can, add to it and increase, improve in the quality, improve in like how we interact with it. And like, we're in this fourth industrial revolution. We're in this like increasingly digital age, and I think that we should use these digital tools to improve the spaces around us. How do you think that digital technologies can help us understand and improve public space and our city?
Yeah, I think that question then makes me ask, okay, what are we trying to solve, right, in the public spaces, right? And what are the things that are issues around public spaces in South Africa that you want to speak to? And for me, it's, well, from my work, my experience, and what I've worked with, it has been mostly about understanding. And it's not understanding of, normally we talk about stakeholders. How do we better communicate with stakeholders, right? For me, the main issue has been the lack of understanding from professionals about our cities and how our cities work. So when we talk about public spaces, it has become really important to to use things like digital surveys, right? And even real-time data, and to collect data so that we can show decision makers how people are actually using these spaces, that completely defy some of the guidelines or definitions of what public spaces mean and what public spaces are. So there's almost this very lack of understanding of how cities work and how actually public spaces work, how streets work. With most of urban design, town planning, politicians, investors, on how the city actually works and who are the users, in ways that we are having to, as people who are interested in making, in revealing those things or making those invisible things visible through digital tools. And I think for instance, GIS and the advancements in GIS has now beginning to slowly but surely enable us to communicate those things, to help us change policies around public space management and public space design. Because I think most of us are very backward in or lack the understanding of a true, we're still stuck in very old, very archaic ways of thinking about space and different types of user and the user that exist, and what principles are, or what these spaces define. So I think digital tools like the tools that GIS offers can enable one to better communicate that, or even better find what data to make an argument about how do you better change policies to suit the actual users, and to change to basically help make better spaces and better public spaces.
And I think these tools like ArcGIS has such a wide suite of such crazy and interesting and powerful applications that you can do so much with, and they're just rolling out with more, where so much more is possible, and you the capabilities that you have are more than ever before. And I think it's just such an interesting peak of technology where you can spend less time kind of trying to time-consuming methods of maybe data capturing and facilitating and collecting, and I think that really leaves more room for innovation and exciting ways at reinventing and recreating our city in a way that is not just kind of top-down master planning, oh, I'm just going to throw this thing here because we need to meet a quota, but kind of transforming the city in a really, really meaningful way. And I think this is a perfect time to talk about your digital twins and the digital twin of Joburg that's hopefully soon to come. What is your opinion on digital twins and how they could change and influence the way we tackle these problems? Just tell us a bit about your work and about digital twins.
I mean, digital twins, I think it's, for me, has been an exciting topic and concept that I'm still trying to understand and wrap my head around, and how useful it is. I'm at no means an expert at this, but what makes me excited about digital twins is how you can integrate it into your workflows, right? So things like VR, for instance, are already part of urban designer workflows, where you are able to just, like how you were saying, that you just get the point across very quickly, where the understanding between the designer and the designer and, well, not even the designer, the co-creator, which is the urban designer, with the actual client or the user group, to understand each other very much faster. And I think there's so much room there to use very advanced technology to just get to those misunderstanding and communication very much faster. For instance, we live in a country where there's like different languages, right? And in those languages, there are different languages in those languages themselves, right? So one way to understand the value of digital twins is that it's visual, right? It's a visual thing. So things like augmented reality have the possibility for us to go to communities and like just walk through the space and tell us how they feel and how they would change their spaces, or co-create with the designers, so-called designers and town planners, so that we're not using it to just we can use it not to just produce the space together, but also point out the main issues, so to understand the issues, the main issues, the pain points together. So from one might be that, because there's a lot of things that get lost into translation, right? And I think for the longest time we've been obsessed, especially as urban planners, with this idea of stakeholders engagement, right? And I think it could really be things like digital twins could be powerful tools where we're starting to understand the issues better, and design better spaces with different user groups, right? So co-create better. And I think there's so much power in there. And yeah, and for us, especially as open designers, like our whole, like 80% of our job is around communicating. But you don't really we struggle a lot with that. And I think if we can just use digital twins just for that, I think we'll be way, 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 way ahead. And I think even with that, I think it might also help us in terms of service delivery, right? Digital twins could essentially just make us or help us solve those issues better. All right. So imagine if in an informal settlement you have systems, right, that people are using to collect data or to collect data around what Jojo tanks need to be refilled, right? But then in the informal settlements, you don't have that kind of 2D base maps, or that place is not even mapped yet. But you have someone in there, most of the people in there who have access to phones with phones that can enable them to access the internet, right? So if things are not planned, we can use that to create that, almost use things like GIS to create those moments through things as simple as mobile phones, right? So for example, I've been working a lot with Survey 123 and the power of Survey 123 to create those digital surveys, but also other apps that can enable us to read that information instantly, where now I don't have to go through a counselor who doesn't pick up my phone. I can almost go directly to, I don't know, the service provider who is able to solve that issue instantly, or to understand and see the data instantly. So because the medium is visual, I think there's so much power. It's a shame that we are so behind in South Africa, and we don't have to be. And it's just because people are not investing in these tools. For example, there's no reason why Esri is not already making headway in terms of this, in ways that other Esri franchises all around the world are making. And if you just look at the different just the seminars, the presentation, and how urban designers are exploring things like gaming, right? And I'm not talking about Minecraft, right? I'm talking about like real like gaming to engage so that they can create these augmented realities and bring them to stakeholders engagements, create these augmented realities for decision makers and problem solver investors to solve the problem faster or understand the issue and the pain points faster, so that help can get there faster, right? Yeah, man. I think I'll stop there actually. I think I'm going on
Yeah.
too long.
No, you brought up some amazing points, and I think like I agree with like everything. I think like I fully believe in people-centered cities, and I think that digital technologies can really help facilitate those participatory processes in ways like never before, where you're able to engage with so many more people. Just the reach you have on the amount of people in the time space and the quality of engagement and data you're able to collect, and also kind of visualizing it for especially like lower income communities, showing them these interventions, showing them how the place could look. And this, I think your speak about gamification, it actually lends perfectly into my next point, which is about urban play. I think play is so important, just in life for both children and for adults, getting that recess, that relief, that time to kind of be goal oriented. And it's such a great way to connect with people with a common goal, instead of the anxieties of social engagement. When you have a group of people and they have a common goal and rules, things just work. And like my friend was saying, sometimes you just want to go to a park and kick ball. But it's like, I think it's those simple things that, like, in our public spaces and in our cities, we need to make space for, in terms of variety of activity and ways for people to engage with the space and with each other, and how digital technologies can be a tool like that could be used for that. And like obviously we have digital games, and I think gamification, I think, is super interesting, because I think when people think games, but people think like just a little teenage boy just kind of spending hours wasting his time on some dumb game killing people. But I think it can be so much more than that. It's a way to engage. Instead of being told a presentation, you're able to engage with content. For me, it's also like another way of data visualization. You're able to engage with an audience so much more, because they're actually they understand the goals, they understand the navigation, they understand these things in a way that they couldn't before. And it's like I think like Pokemon Go is also a really good example of a marriage between digital technologies and AR, and engaging in space and public space and creating a community out of that. People were coming out of their homes and going to public space in a way that had never been seen before for this game, and created a community. And yeah, I'd love to get your take on, I mean, the importance of urban play, like in the city, the importance of it for children and for adults. And like, do you think it's important in city making? And like, what are your opinions on how we can apply, like, create playful cities? I think playful cities are so important. Yeah. What's your take on that?
I mean, listen, for me, I have a very difficult time understanding that whole play thing and how it's being used, especially in the urban design talk, the noise that urban design make when it comes to play, right? I don't know how I feel about that yet. I'm still trying to understand what people actually mean about that. But I think it's intuitive that that would become important, because I mean, especially in South Africa, not even South Africa, but Africa as a whole, because we are the youngest continent out there, right? And for me, I embrace with the idea around play and they just talk about children's cities and very with a lot of suspicion. Maybe it's because I don't understand it enough, but because I live I'm still in the demographic, right? I'm still considered the youth of South Africa. And there's so many issues, man. There's so many livelihood issues that one, like, you can't be thinking about play type of thing, right? And maybe I'm not engaging with the literature enough, but I don't. For me, it just, for now, it sounds very superficial and very. Yeah. Let me not say any more about that. But I think in terms of just reaching your audience, and for me that's the biggest thing, right? So if we have the youngest the one of the youngest continent, and most probably the one of the youngest cities, some of the youngest cities in the world, this is going to become important. How we engage and reach out to the young generation, we need to take more seriously, right? Because we can't be presenting SDFs or IDPs or even thinking about planning and urban design in those, or precinct plans in those very PDF types of format, or very city hall types of format, even workshops, man. Because the majority of our population is not are not in those halls, and you will not find them in those halls or in those workshops in Rosebank or whatever the case is, right? Or even in these parliaments, unless we have innovative ways to do that, right? To get them to engage with the work, to get them engaged, to take seriously these processes, and even rethink these processes and what's important to them, right? So to reach out to them, to try and understand what's important with the youth, what is important to the youth in South Africa has never been more important as now. And what the issues are with the youth and how they use the city has never been more important. And we need to have creative ways to think about how we reach that audience and how we tap into that audience. And I think these are our next jobs. These are the way the next jobs are in terms of urban design and town plan. These are the more interesting jobs, right? Especially if you are within that type of demographics, right? So if let's say the majority of the people, the young population that are actually buying property, okay, are engaging economically, but are not doing it enough or are finding it difficult, but are also playing games, right? They're into games and all these things, right? How do we engage with them as where they are, right? Maybe that's a thing around gamification and how we use gamification to help entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, young Black entrepreneurs in the continent, young Black female entrepreneurs, to access entrepreneur portals, platforms better, so that they can start so that we can help them do their work better, right? To get them to just lift something that was a hurdle, if that thing is spatial, right? Or if that thing is policy related. How do we make that person's life just a little bit easier, right? And for us, if they are in different platforms like social media, Twitter or Instagram, how do we leverage those tools to engage? And I think gamification makes it more funner, much more fun. Yeah, to engage. Maybe there's just one platform, right, to engage these people. Yeah. So for me, it's the nature of it. It just has to be much more innovative, right? We need to be much more innovative, and I think that's where play becomes important to me, because you find that most of these people that we're trying to reach are on the street hanging around universities, or they're on the street hanging around in sports field, or at festivals, in these festivals, or sitting around the corner somewhere. Or at a club, or whatever the case is, right? So how do we communicate in a way that those people and the issues that they are facing and how they use the city, and how they transverse it, how do they engage, and how can we make that better? And I think gamification is important, not only just a visual tool that will help us just get this town planning speak out of the way so that we can reach the audience a bit better and create relevant cities that work for these people, I think is one. And if we can make that process fun, even better, because that's where I would go, right? Rather than sit at a hole somewhere. Yeah, so a lot of maybe this, what is it called? Tactical urbanism. I mean, is another way. And how do we make more of that? And I think the city of Johannesburg has been really exploring with that piloting thing, that they're on this piloting steez. And I'm not sure where it comes from, but there's something there that also opens up a sense of temporariness or activation that I think is somehow helping activate the city in ways that people are starting to talk about things and engage with each other and find ways to engage with the city better, or with decision makers better. So I think play is one way to do it, in order for you to understand the issues. Instead of this, I'm not sure, but these designs, man, where it's like, okay, instead of like we're gonna fix the street by making more jungle gyms randomly, like it's, for me, that's weird. Or we're gonna make it more colorful. It's just weird ways of thinking about cities, where, especially in our cities, where there's so many issues, man, and don't have time for this stuff. But if we can how do we add value, and how do we add value in ways that brings these platforms, understand these platforms in a way that we can help bring value and change people's lives, man.
Yeah, I think you really speak to what's happening on the ground. And I think, in a country where such like basic essential rights and services are not being met, and housing, electricity, water, I think the last thing that's on their mind
Access to
is
education,
play.
man. Right?
But I do think play is important. I think in childhood development especially, I think and like high quality play, whatever that means, and I think that I mean, obviously we know like the benefits of play, and how they help like social cohesion, critical thinking, problem solving, physical and mental health. And I think that creating spaces for that kind of quality engagement in the city as well, that's accessible not only for a certain type of person, or a certain type, or a certain community, but for all people of all backgrounds and all income levels, because I think it's almost like a mediator. When kids are playing, it's not like they're playing with only people of their kind or people that are in the same income group. They're just playing, and they just come together for this collective goal. And I think it starts there with building community. And I think maybe I'm simplifying it a bit too much, but I think play is important, especially for kids. And I think I completely agree that there are more pressing problems. I think people need homes, people need transport, people need education, people need water and electricity. But I also think play can be a part of that. I think I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic. I think you can have it all. And
I mean, I hear that. I mean, I can hear
Yeah.
that. I can hear that, Shannon. As I think for anyone to be able, for anyone to be interested in engaging, you kind of have to lay the groundwork, right? So if we're thinking about how do we get people there, like this idea of, okay, maybe it might be a tool for social cohesion, so people can actually speak to each other and exchange things and engage with each other in ways that that are helpful or meaningful, to get them to something else, and then maybe something else that will help improve their lives, right? I think if you think about it that way, that becomes important. Yeah, so that's how I would like to think about it. In any case, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I think the core aspect of this whole discussion is that like we can really leverage these digital tools and technologies to create these creative and innovative solutions, or like ways of translating and communicating information, and creating like engaging ways to engage and participate and like create create ways for people to connect and for people to engage with things outside of their compartmentalized lives. And I think, technology such as Survey 123, digital twins, ArcGIS Pro, and like I think they have a technology for digital twins specifically. But all of these tools and like gamification, all of these tools are exactly that, they're tools. And we can push them to their potential and leverage them to create like meaningful discussions and engagement and like hopefully action.
Yeah.
But I think that
Yeah,
like,
and I think for
innovation
me,
is exciting.
me, Shannon, it's becoming so there's so much sense of urgency more than ever, right? So no one has time to go to workshops anymore, right? As much as we can talk each other to death about the issues and about ideas, we don't have time for it, right? So I think it's so important that we really because we are so behind with the technology, because the technology is there, right? How do planners leverage it? Do we even understand what it can do for our cities and how it can enhance our workflows and efficiencies, even service delivery, right? Because these tools are means to an end, right? And if the end is service delivery, how can these tools help us do that better, right? We need to talk solutions, right? And for me, I think there's so much potential that once we get people in universities, people in the communities familiarize themselves and use these things as weapons to get stuff done. Because it's not good out there, man.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think there's so many things we could discuss, and I feel like we could go on for hours, but I think this is a good place to call it. But thank you so much for like engaging in this discussion. I think it's so interesting also to hear your perspective, coming from someone who has their master's in urban design and has that experience in the working world and in practice, and having seen so many different lenses of the city. Your insight has definitely been super enlightening and super interesting. And like, I hope that, however we engage in our public space and with each other, we can somehow bring each other a little bit closer to each other and create opportunities for people to connect in the city. I mean, we all live here together, but it feels sometimes like we're so far apart. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. If you have any concluding comments, now's the time. But no pressure if not.
No, man, it's been a pleasure, Shannon. It's always good to speak to you guys. I think I'm just inspired, and I'm excited that you guys are starting to think about these things, and that the universities are allowing that space for you to do that, especially at research level. So I'm excited to see what else you can find and how else you can become involved and interested and testing these things, not only at school, but in your career as well. So I'm excited that there's more people who are thinking digital twins and GIS like I am, and excited as I am about
No,
it. So it's really inspiring, and I hope we could take this into the university, man, and get more people into this path.
yeah, absolutely. I think even just seeing like somebody else that's in the profession actually do this has been super inspiring and has almost like grounded my passion for it.
Mm.
Because like, oh no, it's not just a fad, and it's not just only something that's achievable in these first world countries. Like we can bring this home to South Africa too, and we can
It's already
engage
here.
in this meaningfully. Yeah, and I think like you're such an inspiration. I definitely, every time I like when I think of you, I think like if my career path like went anywhere like where like yours, like even just your interests, I think we're so perfectly aligned. So I'm so glad I got a chance to speak to you and to interview you, and hopefully like we'll see each other soon.
Perfect, Shannon. It's been a pleasure.